Hey, welcome back. This is Adan and Matt in the morning. The show where you call in and ask your questions, and we reason together through the pages of the Scripture.
Yep.
As in the last question, we don't always have the exact answers, but we certainly learn a lot and enjoy reasoning through the pages of the Scriptures.
Yes.
Okay, so the question, capital T-H-E, the question. What is the meaning of life?
Why are we here?
Why are we here? All right. So to that, we turn to the book of
Ecclesiastes?
Yes. There was a king that was widely reported to be the wisest man ever on the earth, and his name was
Solomon.
And he wrote a book. And
he wrote several.
Well, a few. And this book, Ecclesiastes, the entire point, as if you read through chapter 1 and chapter 2, he goes on and on and on and saying, why are we here? Mm-hmm. And in chapter 1, he says, well, it'd probably help if we turn there.
Yeah. Maybe.
Ecclesiastes.
If you're looking for it, it's right after Proverbs.
Okay, so flip to the middle of the book and take a right.
I really like this book. It was interesting. Last summer, a group of friends and I read through this book, and it was really interesting to see the split in how we viewed it, because about half the group saw it as deeply depressing, because Solomon says that pretty much everything that we do in this life is vain. All the things that we look for and work for is vain.
Yeah. So
but the other half of the group saw it as widely encouraging, because if all the things we strive for are vain, that means we don't have to strive as hard for those things, and we can focus on what matters.
Well, there you go. All right. So often we give you chapter and verse. On this, we're going to kind of give a big picture of the summary, and then chapter 1 speaks about the vanity of life.
Yes.
And he goes on and on about just the vanity of life. Chapter 2, he goes, all right, well, if it's not about life, and we do that, we think, man, it's got to be health, it's got to be strength, it's got to be life.
Yeah.
But you talk to old people and they're like, eh.
Not
and so
much.
we're like, right, so maybe it's pleasure. And so chapter 2, he speaks about pleasure, and this guy was a king. He was very wealthy. He was one of the wealthiest guys ever. And if you do the, economists have this time of worth of money formula, and basically costs double every 10 years. And so if you take what he had then and you put it in today's time, he's still the wealthiest person ever.
Yes.
Yeah. So
and if you want to dive into how he acquired his wealth and stuff, it was all blessing from God. That's in 1 Kings chapter 3, and then in chapters 9 and 10 of 1 Kings, it talks about just how much he had and how the queen, that one queen
of Sheba?
Yes, that one, was amazed.
All right, so he figures out it's not life.
Yes.
Chapter 2, he figures out it's not pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
So chapter 3 talks about everything having its time. And then in chapter 4, some people say, well, it's hard work. The value is really in hard work. It's a job well done. It's not the money you get from the job. It's not the pleasure that you can buy from that money. It's the value of a job well done.
Yes.
And in chapter 4, he talks about the vanity of toil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not hard work. And also in chapter 4, he says it's not popularity.
Yes.
So we're running out of things. The wisest king that ever lived is
debunking everything we think is of value.
Everything that we've tried. And we know this. Those of us who've been around a while, we've tried this. We've tried to be happy. We've tried to have pleasure. We've tried to be popular. And even when we get all those things, we're like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in chapter 5, he goes, well, maybe it's vanity, or maybe it's gain and honor.
Yes.
And he realizes, nope, that's vain too. So chapter
6 kind of continues that, and also talks about self-indulgence again a little bit.
Yeah. And then chapter 8's real helpful, because he says, we're all going to die.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the wicked buried, who had come and gone from the place of holiness, and they were forgotten in the city where they had done so. This also is vanity.
Yeah.
All right.
If you're trying to follow along, that was chapter 8, verse 10.
Thank you. So what's the point?
Yes.
So he goes through this whole book, the wisest king that ever lived. He realizes it's not wisdom. Mm-hmm. The wealthiest king that ever lived.
Says it's not money.
It's not money. The most powerful empire at his time. Remember, King David took over all of these nations around them, hands it over to Solomon. Now, not only does he have all of this wealth, but he also has peace.
Yes.
And he goes, well, it's not power. Mm-hmm. He was extremely popular. It wasn't like, he's still going, what is the point? But he was wise.
Yes, he was.
He was the wisest guy that ever lived.
Uh-huh.
So he sets in order many proverbs, and the preacher, verse 10 of chapter 12, and the preacher is a nickname, if you will, for King Solomon.
Uh-huh.
The preacher sought to find acceptable words, and what was written was upright, words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and the words of scholars are like well-driven nails, given by one shepherd. And these words that he's speaking about, by the way, are our Proverbs, our book of Proverbs. Okay.
Which he wrote a vast majority of.
And further, my son, be admonished by these. Of making many books, there is no end. And much study is wearisome to the flesh. I am actually going to bring this to my professor later and tell him that much study is wearisome to the flesh. And we know that's true. Those of us who are here on campus doing school.
You should take that to him during finals week, because if you did it right now, he's like, well, you get next week off for spring break. And
oh, yeah, that's a good call.
You should save that one.
So next verse, 13, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. This whole book is how to find joy, how to find comfort. What is the point of life? The question was, what's
the meaning of life? Why are we here? What's it about?
Verse 13, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So that's it. The meaning of life, fear God and keep his commandments. And Jesus tells us, no new commandment do I give you, but
love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind.
And love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
And the law and the prophets are summed up into these two.
Yep.
So what is the meaning of life? Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. Mm-hmm. And I submit to you that you can't love your neighbor as yourself without first being loved by God, who teaches us how to love.
Absolutely.
So the meaning of life is to fear God, keep his commandments. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13. Jesus tells us, no new commandment do I give to you, but to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbors yourself. So, all right. We are coming up. Do we have time for another one? We're going to say no.
Yeah. Let's play some Jesus music.
All right.